Yes, we call ourselves the land of the free, but we do so while conveniently ignoring the following. Although the United States has but 5% of the world's population, we have 25% of the world's prisoners. The sad fact of the matter is we incarcerate more people per capita and far longer than any other civilized nation on earth. There's something wrong with that. If you're listening to this, that's because one of your loved ones is probably locked up somewhere in a penal colony, or a prison, or a jail, or a penitentiary at either the state or the federal level. You're probably looking for someone to help because your loved one's either been killed, beaten, injured, or perhaps their rights are being ignored. As you know, up to a third or a quarter of people locked up behind bars have serious mental health needs that are going unaddressed in the penal system. When we stopped treating mental illness, we started incarcerating the mentally ill. We now call imprisonment the premier form of treatment for those in need of care. Let's say a loved one of yours has been killed or seriously injured. What do? In the event of death, you obviously need a lawyer. The Department of Corrections is a closed universe. It will be very difficult for you to get any information out of them without a fight. You'll probably want to bring a claim arising under the Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution, claiming that your loved one has been deprived of their right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. Understand that Eighth Amendment claims are difficult. Not every application of force amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. The United States Supreme Court has held that the Eighth Amendment is violated when prison officials use pain for sadistic reasons, for the very purpose of causing pain. The landmark case involves a prison chaining a man to a whipping post and leaving him basically to molder in the hot sun in the Southwest. That case was held to be gratuitous violence, gratuitous imposition of pain for no legitimate penological purpose. Bringing a claim in the federal courts for a decedent, that is, a person who's expired, requires a lawyer who is skillful in the manipulation of federal civil rights statutes. There are various immunities, in particular qualified immunities, which give the benefit of the doubt to state actors or prison officials in close cases. Listen to an attorney general or a public lawyer representing prison officials, and you'll almost always find that they think cases are close. When cases are not close and prison officials engage in outright unlawful misconduct, you'll find that prisons will fire them, charge the guards or jailers with criminal offenses, and refuse to indemnify or stand behind the prison official who injured your loved one. It does you no good to bring an action against a prison official if there's nothing to collect. It's important for you to get into the case early to find out whether there was adequate training, whether supervisors turned a blind eye to willful misconduct on behalf of their subordinates, and so forth. The law, again, as I say, is hopelessly complicated, and you're going to need help sorting your way through it. With respect to non-constitutional claims or constitutional claims in general, what you'll learn is you cannot sue the state or the federal government. You cannot sue without their consent. That's because we are governed in the United States by laws steeped in a notion called sovereign immunity. Now, Erwin Chemerinsky, a law scholar on the West Coast, claims that sovereign immunity has no place in a republic, that if we the people hold government accountable, the sovereign's declaring itself immune from accountability is an obscene joke. Of course, Chemerinsky is right, but the courts aren't listening, and right now sovereign immunity is the law of the land. If your loved one has been killed in prison and it's a result of prison misconduct, you may need to seek a waiver by the state of its sovereign immunity. This can be done in a couple of different ways, well, basically 3 different ways. You can pursue a claim under what's called the Claims Commission of a given state. That is, there is a commissioner who can, on behalf of the state, waive the state's sovereign immunity so that you can bring a tort action against the state in egregious cases. In the alternative, you can seek a special act from your legislature. That is permission from the lawmakers themselves in your particular case to bring an action. You may also want to finally check the statutes that govern your various states to see if there are any exceptions to sovereign immunity passed by the legislature. As to claims involving surviving prisoners, you need to be very, very careful about something called the Prison Litigation Reform Act. The United States Supreme Court long ago declared that unless a prisoner exhausts his or her administrative remedies by filing a timely administrative complaint and taking every available appeal, they will not be able to turn to the courts for a claim of money damages later on. In a case my office handled before the United States Supreme Court, we tried to claim that when prisoners were beaten by guards, beaten to the point of defecating on themselves, they weren't raising complaints in the courts about prison conditions. Being beaten up by guards ought not to be a condition of confinement, we said to the United States Supreme Court. But the court disagreed in a 9-0 ruling, holding that any claim against a prison official must be exhausted before turning to the federal courts. Typically, that means filing a prompt complaint, and your loved one may or may not know how to do that. Although prisoners are given an orientation about prison policies and procedures when first admitted to their various penal institutions, few prisoners have the presence of mind to recall that years, months, or decades later. You want to contact a lawyer when you first learn that something has gone amiss with your loved one, whether they've been beaten, held in confinement too long, been denied medical condition, or are otherwise abused by their guards. Contact a lawyer immediately. What that lawyer should do would be to place on notice the Attorney General's office of the prison, with jurisdiction over the prison, to let them know that a claim is coming. You'll also want to have your loved one contact a lawyer immediately so the lawyer can research and advise on what exhaustion should be undertaken to preserve claims in the courts. And then the prisoner needs to persevere in pursuing the claims through the various administrative hurdles that prisons place between prisoners and justice. Do not give up. No society is any better than the manner in which it treats the least among us. We do a horrible job of treating prisoners with respect and dignity, and it speaks poorly of all of us. Fight back. Find a lawyer ready, willing, and able to stand up to the state or federal government and demand justice for your loved one. Just because your loved one's been locked up, there's no reason to believe that he or she has been forgotten. Fight back, stand tall for justice, bring your claim to the appropriate court, and see that justice is done. When your loved one is killed, maimed, or otherwise injured while in state custody, hold the state accountable and responsible for what its actors have done. It's ironic how often prosecutors stand in the well of the court and say of those we love, they need to be held accountable for the wrongs that they do. When the state does wrong to a person in its custody, it needs to be held accountable too. Aggressive and vigorous lawyering will see to it that justice is done.